In 1969, Frank Sinatra disappeared for a week. Caesar's Palace lost millions, and people whispered about mob connections. But the truth was more shocking. The most powerful entertainer in America was hiding in his room, terrified of losing something important. It wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. From million-dollar insurance policies to almost killing his wife in frustration. This is the untold story of how Frank Sinatra lived on the edge of fear. And it was all revealed in a lost interview. Frank Sinatra was born on December 12, 1915, in Hoboken, New Jersey. His birth was difficult and dramatic. He weighed 13.5 pounds, which made the delivery tough. The doctor thought he was stillborn, but his grandmother saved him by running cold water over him. This near-death experience left him with scars on his face and a damaged ear. Sinatra's parents were Italian immigrants. His mother, Dolly, was a strong figure in their community. She worked as a midwife and had some power in the local Democratic Party. But she was often too busy with her work to give Sinatra much attention. This lack of attention made Sinatra crave success and recognition. As a teenager, Sinatra was rebellious. He didn't care much for school, often skipping class to hang out in pool halls and gyms. By the time he was 16, he had been expelled from high school for causing trouble. He had to start working to support himself. One of his first jobs was delivering newspapers. During these deliveries, he started singing. His uncle even gave him a ukulele for his 15th birthday, and Sinatra began playing it at family gatherings. At 19, Sinatra joined a local group called the Three Flashes. They changed their name to the Hoboken Four and entered a popular radio contest called Major Beau's Amateur Hour. They won, which led to a 6-month tour across the country. But things didn't go well. Sinatra became the favorite of many female fans, causing jealousy among the group. After some fights, Sinatra left the tour and returned to Hoboken, determined to become a solo artist. One important job for Sinatra was working as a singing waiter at a place called the Rustic Cabin. He earned just $15 a week, but the job gave him a chance to perform on a New York radio station. One night, trumpeter Harry James heard him sing and decided to offer Sinatra a contract. This was Sinatra's big break. In 1939, he joined the Harry James Band, where he earned $75 a week. His first recordings with the band didn't do well, but in 1939 he recorded a song called All or Nothing at All. It didn't sell much at first, but years later, when Sinatra became famous, the song became a hit. In 1940, Sinatra joined the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, and that was when things really started to take off. Dorsey recognized Sinatra's talent and offered him $125 a week. Sinatra's voice improved under Dorsey's guidance, and he learned important techniques that helped him control his breath and hold notes longer. His first big hit with Dorsey was Polka Dots and Moonbeams. Later, he had even bigger hits, like I'll Never Smile Again, which stayed at #1 for 12 weeks. Sinatra became wildly popular, especially with women, and the crowds at his concerts would scream and faint in what became known as Sinatra Mania. By 1941, Sinatra had become the star of Dorsey's band, but he decided to leave the band. He was under contract with Dorsey, who demanded 43% of Sinatra's lifetime earnings when he left. This led to a bitter dispute, and rumors even suggested that Sinatra's mafia connections helped him settle the matter. At the time, big bands were everything, and singers who went solo didn't always succeed. And that's what happened with Sinatra in the start. A musician's strike in 1942 made it hard to record music. Still, Sinatra didn't give up. On December 30th, 1942, just 4 months after leaving Dorsey, Sinatra debuted as a solo performer at the Paramount Theater in New York. That performance started the bobby-soxer craze and turned Sinatra into a superstar. The bobby-soxer craze was unlike anything before. It started at that show when thousands of teenage girls went crazy for Sinatra. They screamed, cheered, and couldn't stop applauding. It scared Sinatra because it was so loud. Some fans watched up to 56 shows in a row, even though they were tired and hungry. They followed Sinatra wherever he went, causing chaos on the streets. Sinatra's music helped too. He had big hits like All or Nothing at All and I'll Never Smile Again. All or Nothing at All was first recorded in 1939, but became a big hit in 1943 when it was re-released. It stayed at the top of the charts for 21 weeks. Sinatra's ability to make old songs sound fresh made him stand out. I'll Never Smile Again was another hit. It was Sinatra's first #1 song and stayed at the top for 12 weeks. It helped him become one of the most famous singers of his time. As Sinatra's career grew, people started calling him the Voice. His voice was different from anyone else's. He had perfect pitch, which means he could hit any note perfectly. Sinatra worked hard to improve his voice. After hearing a violinist perform in 1940, he wanted to do something similar with his voice. He did exercises to make his breathing better and spent time studying music. He also worked with coaches to improve his skills. The result was a voice that could hold notes for a long time and make people feel deep emotions. Meanwhile, Frank Sinatra started acting in the 1940s. In 1943, he appeared in his first movie, Higher and Higher, where he played himself and sang. This was just the start of his film career, and he would make a movie almost every year for the next decade. Early on, he played roles that focused on his charm and singing skills, like in Anchors Away, 1945, and On the Town, 1949. But he also showed he could take on more serious topics. In the short film The House I Live In, 1945, he spoke about religious tolerance, which won an award and showed he could do more than just sing in movies. However, Sinatra hit some tough times. In 1950, he had a serious vocal injury that almost ended his singing career. Then, his affair with Ava Gardner hurt his public image. By 1952, Sinatra's career was struggling. His music sales dropped, and Hollywood wasn't offering him roles. But just when it seemed like his career was over, he made a huge comeback. In 1953, he got the role that changed everything in From Here to Eternity. He played Private Angelo Maggio, a troubled soldier, and the role was much more serious than anything he had done before. Sinatra really fought for this role, even offering to do it for free. He took a much lower salary than usual, just $8,000. His performance was powerful, and it won him an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. This was a turning point, showing the world that Sinatra was more than just a singer. It also helped his music career because it showed he could do much more than perform songs. After winning the Oscar, Sinatra became even more successful in both acting and music. He took on tough roles, like in The Man with the Golden Arm, 1955, where he played a drug addict. This was a risky role for him, but it paid off. At the same time, he released some of his most famous albums like In the Wee Small Hours and Songs for Swingin' Lovers. These albums showed a deeper side of him, matching the changes in his acting. Sinatra's success in movies helped his music, and his music helped his movies. In High Society, 1956, he performed alongside Bing Crosby and Grace Kelly, mixing both of his talents in one film. Then, in 1960, Sinatra made another bold move. He started Reprise Records, a company that gave artists more control over their music. This was different from most other labels at the time, which kept all the rights to the music. Sinatra's goal was to help artists keep their creative freedom. At first, Reprise focused mainly on Sinatra's own music and that of his friends. But Sinatra's vision was bigger. He wanted to create a place for any artist who wanted to be free from the control of big labels. In 1963, Sinatra sold part of Reprise to Warner Brothers for $1.5 million, but kept a third of the company. This deal helped Reprise grow, and with the help of Mo Austin, the label signed artists like Jimi Hendrix, Neil Young, and Joni Mitchell. The label's focus on artist freedom led to a lot of success. Meanwhile, Sinatra was getting famous for his link with the Rat Pack. However, it wasn't always led by Frank Sinatra. In fact, it started in the early 1950s at the home of Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. Back then, it was just a group of Hollywood stars like Judy Garland, David Niven, and Spencer Tracy hanging out together. One night, after a wild trip to Las Vegas, Bacall looked at the group and joked, "You look like a goddamn Rat Pack." The name stuck, even though the group itself would change over time. Everything shifted after Bogart died in 1957. Sinatra took over and turned the Rat Pack into something new. He brought in Dean Martin, his longtime friend, and Sammy Davis Jr., whom he had met when Davis was just 15. They were soon joined by Peter Lawford and Joey Bishop, and the core group was born. What made them special wasn't just their talent, but how different they all were. Sinatra was the slick Italian-American from Hoboken. Martin, the son of Italian immigrants, grew up struggling to speak English. Davis, an African-American entertainer, faced racism every day. But somehow, they clicked, united by their humor and a shared love of performing. In 1960, the Rat Pack took over Las Vegas. Their shows at the Sands Hotel were like nothing anyone had ever seen. They would sing, crack jokes, and interrupt each other, turning their performances into wild, unpredictable parties. The audience never knew what to expect, and that was the magic. The group even had their own slang, calling death the Big Casino and referring to regular people as Clyde. On stage, they made everything look easy, but behind the scenes, they rehearsed a lot to keep their chaos entertaining. The Rat Pack wasn't just about Las Vegas. They made movies too, with Ocean's 11 becoming their most famous. During filming, they kept their chaotic routine alive, shooting during the day, performing at night, and partying until dawn. Somehow, they managed to finish most scenes in one take, blending work and fun in a way that made them legends. Their influence stretched beyond showbiz. Through Peter Lawford, who was married to John F. Kennedy's sister, the group became close to the future president. They helped with Kennedy's campaign, performing at fundraisers, and even letting him use Sinatra's private jet. Still, Sinatra's fear of losing his popularity was a shadow that followed him throughout his life. It drove his decisions, fueled his anxieties, and often led to dramatic moments. This fear was at its peak in the early 1950s, when Sinatra's career hit a rough patch. In December 1950, a vocal hemorrhage left him unable to sing for months. He later called this the darkest moment of my career. Adding to his troubles, the music world was changing, and Sinatra began to worry he might be left behind. The combination of physical struggles and shifting musical tastes only deepened his fear of fading away. Sinatra's reactions to this fear were intense and sometimes destructive. In a 1963 interview, he admitted, "I have an overacute capacity for sadness, as well as elation. This emotional roller coaster took a toll, leading to erratic behavior, including several attempts to end his life." Sinatra's rivalry with younger singers added fuel to his insecurities. One of his fiercest competitors in the early 1950s was Eddie Fisher, a rising star 13 years younger than Sinatra. Fisher's hits, like Thinking of You, were climbing the charts while Sinatra's popularity was waning. The rivalry became personal in 1954 when Fisher married Debbie Reynolds, America's sweetheart. Together, they became Hollywood's golden couple, overshadowing Sinatra. Fueled by jealousy, Sinatra mocked Fisher, calling him Pookie and spreading unflattering rumors about him. Another bitter rivalry was with Jimmy Roselli, an Italian-American singer from Sinatra's own hometown of Hoboken, New Jersey. Roselli gained fame in the 1960s and 1970s, which Sinatra saw as a direct challenge to his status as the top Italian-American entertainer. Their feud went beyond music and turned personal. Sinatra reportedly used his influence to block Roselli from performing in major venues, including Las Vegas. In one infamous incident in 1969, Sinatra allegedly had Roselli removed from a show at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach. These actions showed how far Sinatra would go to stay at the top. Apart from that, Frank Sinatra cared about his voice more than anything else. To him, it wasn't just how he made a living, it was who he was and his popularity. He followed strict routines every day to protect it. He woke up at exactly 3:30 p.m., gargled warm salt water, and did nearly an hour of vocal exercises lying on his back. His coach had designed these exercises, and Sinatra never skipped them. He avoided foods like dairy, believing they made his voice less clear. Before every show, he drank honey, lemon, and hot water to soothe his throat. When he was 38, he even had his tonsils removed to improve his range, something usually done for kids. He claimed the surgery gave him an extra octave. In the recording studio, Sinatra had high standards. He always used the same microphone, a Neumann U47 he called Teal. He wouldn't record without it. Once, when it broke during a session, he refused to sing for weeks until it was fixed. Sinatra even insured his voice for $5.5 million, worth about $60 million today, with strict rules about how many cigarettes he could smoke. But he often ignored those rules, leading to fights with his insurance company. A simple cold, though, was his worst nightmare. When Sinatra caught one, it wasn't just annoying, it felt like the end of the world. He hated how a cold made his voice unreliable, and it left him full of doubt. He became irritable and distant, canceling shows and avoiding people. In 1958, 2 days before a big concert in Las Vegas, he caught a cold and locked himself in his hotel room, convinced his voice was ruined. His team found him muttering, "The voice is gone." They had to coax him out, and when he finally performed, his voice was perfect. Some thought the problem wasn't his cold, but his nerves. Sinatra's fear of illness made him go to extreme lengths. During flu season, he'd wear a surgical mask in public. He replaced air filters in his homes and hotels every 2 days. He even had a special room backstage at concerts where the air was purified so he wouldn't get sick. His valet joked, "When the boss had a cold, we all had a cold." His mood affected everyone around him. Illness didn't just impact his mood, it caused trouble in his relationships and work. Once, when he had a cold, he got so frustrated that he threw a clock radio at his wife, Mia Farrow. Luckily, he missed. On set or in the studio, Sinatra was no easier to deal with. When he was recording September of My Years, he forced the band to do endless takes because of a lingering cold. The album became a classic and even won a Grammy, but the sessions were tense and exhausting. Even Las Vegas felt the effects of his colds. In 1969, he canceled a week of shows due to laryngitis, and Caesar's Palace lost 15% of its revenue. People joked, "When Sinatra sneezes, the Strip catches a cold." But catching cold wasn't the only problem. Frank Sinatra was also known for his bad temper. He blamed it on his Sicilian temper, but it caused problems everywhere he went. One of his wives, Barbara, said he had a Jekyll and Hyde personality, meaning he could be kind one moment and furious the next. Another wife, Mia Farrow, described him as manic, showing how unpredictable he could be. Sinatra's anger got him into trouble at work many times. In 1967, while filming The Detective, he got so upset with another actor that he grabbed him by the collar and threatened to ruin his career. The whole production had to stop, costing a lot of money, and everyone on set became nervous around him. Even outside of work, his temper made headlines. In 1973, during a concert in Australia, he insulted female reporters, calling them buck-and-a-half hookers. This caused a huge backlash. Unions banned him from performing, and he couldn't leave the country until he apologized. Sometimes, Sinatra's rage turned destructive. One of the most famous incidents happened in 1962. He had spent a lot of money fixing up his house for President John F. Kennedy, even adding a helipad and a special room for him. But when he found out Kennedy was staying with Bing Crosby instead, Sinatra lost it. He took a sledgehammer to the helipad and destroyed it. Then he went inside and smashed photos of Kennedy. This fight also ruined his friendship with Peter Lawford, who had delivered the bad news. Sinatra never forgave him. On top of all this, Sinatra was rumored to have ties to the mob. He denied it, but his connections to known gangsters kept people talking. One of these gangsters was Sam Giancana, a powerful mob boss in Chicago. During John F. Kennedy's campaign, Sinatra reportedly helped connect Giancana to the Kennedy family to get votes. This later caused problems when the Kennedys started cracking down on organized crime. Sinatra also reportedly went to a secret mafia meeting in Cuba in 1946. He traveled with Al Capone's cousins and performed for the mob leaders. Later, he claimed he didn't know what the meeting was about, but people didn't believe him. The FBI even kept a file on Sinatra for 40 years. They couldn't prove he committed crimes, but they documented his friendships with gangsters like Lucky Luciano and Bugsy Siegel. Frank Sinatra's personal life was as dramatic as his music career. His first marriage was to Nancy Barbato, a girl he fell in love with when he was just 19. They met in 1934 and got married on February 4, 1939, in Nancy's hometown of Jersey City. At the time, the world was struggling through the Great Depression, and Frank and Nancy started their life together in a small apartment. Soon, their family grew. Their daughter, Nancy Sinatra, was born in 1940, followed by Frank Sinatra Jr. in 1944 and Tina Sinatra in 1948. They seemed like the perfect family, but things were far from perfect. As Frank became famous, he spent more and more time away from home. He was always touring, performing, or meeting new people. Nancy was left to raise the kids on her own, and the distance between them kept growing. To make things worse, Frank started having affairs. One of his first public affairs was with actress Ava Gardner, and it became impossible to hide. In 1950, on Valentine's Day, Frank told Nancy about Ava. Soon after, they separated, and their divorce was finalized in 1951. Even though their marriage ended, Nancy stayed close to Frank for the rest of his life and never remarried. Frank's love affair with Ava Gardner was wild and intense. He had been captivated by her even before they met, but Ava wasn't impressed with him at first. She thought he was arrogant. Over time, though, they bonded over their fiery tempers and love for drinking and smoking. Their relationship was full of passion and fights. They were even arrested once after a late-night joyride where they shot out windows with pistols. Ava got pregnant twice during their time together, but chose to have abortions. Frank was devastated, especially the second time, when he waited by her side as she recovered. Despite all the drama, they got married in 1951. But their relationship couldn't last. They separated after 2 years. Still, Frank always held a special place in his heart for Ava and often called her the love of his life. Frank's third marriage shocked everyone. In 1966, he married actress Mia Farrow, who was 30 years younger than him. Frank was 50, and Mia was just 21. Many people doubted the relationship, and the two were very different. Mia later said she was too immature for marriage, and the age gap made things hard. Their marriage ended quickly. Frank even sent her divorce papers while she was filming Rosemary's Baby. After that, Frank found lasting love with Barbara Marx, whom he married in 1976. Barbara stayed with him through his later years and was by his side until his death in 1998. Even with all the ups and downs in his love life, Frank had strong connections with his children. Nancy Sinatra, his eldest, became a famous singer just like her dad. She had a big hit with These Boots Are Made for Walkin', and even recorded a duet with Frank called Something Stupid, which became a #1 song. Frank Jr. followed his father into music too, but he often felt overshadowed. Still, he worked closely with Frank in later years as his musical director. One of the scariest moments in Frank Jr.'s life was when he was kidnapped in 1963. Frank paid the ransom to save his son, and the ordeal brought them closer. Tina Sinatra, the youngest, shared many special moments with her father, like traveling with him and celebrating milestones together. Later in life, she worked hard to preserve his legacy. Frank Sinatra's later career, from the 1970s to the 1990s, was a mix of incredible achievements and tough challenges. As he grew older, his voice naturally began to show signs of aging, but his ability to connect with audiences never faded. He remained a towering figure in music, proving time and again why he was known as the Voice. In 1980, Sinatra released an ambitious album called Trilogy, Past, Present, Future. This 3-disc set was a showcase of his versatility. One disc revisited timeless classics, another featured contemporary pop songs, and the third introduced brand new material. The album was a big success, earning both critical praise and commercial acclaim. It was a clear message to the world that Sinatra was still a force to be reckoned with in the changing music landscape. At the age of 77, Sinatra had an extraordinary comeback with his 1993 album Duets. This project paired him with modern stars like Bono, Aretha Franklin, and Tony Bennett as they performed his classic hits together. The album was a smash hit, reaching #2 on the Billboard charts and selling over 3 million copies in the U.S. It introduced Sinatra to a younger audience, proving his music was truly timeless. However, these high points didn't come without struggles. As he aged, Sinatra began to face memory issues and often relied on teleprompters during his performances. His final major concert, held on February 25, 1995, at the Marriott Hotel in Palm Desert, was both a powerful and bittersweet moment. Despite his declining health, he delivered an energetic and heartfelt performance, showing glimpses of the charisma and vocal power that made him a legend. It was clear, though, that this would be his last significant public show. In his final years, Sinatra dealt with serious health problems, including heart attacks and pneumonia. Yet, he still made occasional appearances and even recorded a song in 1995, Dry Your Eyes, for Tony Bennett's album Here's to the Ladies. This was his last known recording, a quiet but fitting end to a monumental career. One unforgettable moment from this era happened during the 1994 Grammy Awards. Sinatra, then 78 years old, was being honored with the prestigious Legend Award. The ceremony, watched by millions, was meant to celebrate his unparalleled contributions to music. As he accepted the award, Sinatra charmed the audience with his humor and grace, even joking about the lack of alcohol backstage. But just as he was hitting his stride, the producers abruptly cut to a commercial break, silencing him mid-speech. The audience was stunned, and the incident caused an immediate backlash. Host Gary Shandling tried to ease the tension, joking that Sinatra would find a way to get even. But the damage had been done. Billy Joel, performing later that evening, protested the cutoff by pausing his song River of Dreams for an extended 23 seconds, mockingly saying, "Valuable advertising time going by. Dollars, dollars, dollars." The crowd erupted in applause, standing in solidarity with Sinatra. Frank Sinatra passed away on May 14, 1998, at 10:50 p.m. in Los Angeles. He was 82 years old. The cause of death was a heart attack, and his passing marked the end of a life that left a huge mark on music, film, and culture. His daughter Tina later shared in her memoir that she found out about his death over the phone just after watching the final episode of Seinfeld. This detail showed how even in his final moments, Sinatra's life was full of complex family dynamics. When the world heard about his death, it felt like losing a legend. Sinatra wasn't just a singer or actor, he was a symbol of his time. Many famous figures spoke about the impact he had on their lives and careers. Tony Bennett, a longtime friend, called him the best singer ever, praising his voice, his timing, and the way he made every note perfect. Shirley MacLaine, who acted with Sinatra in Some Came Running, said he wasn't just an artist but a force of nature who represented the very best of American culture. Even Bob Dylan, known for his unique style, shared how much Sinatra's music influenced him. "He sang with the truth in his voice," Dylan said, explaining how Sinatra had a rare ability to connect deeply with his audience. Bono from U2, who once sang with Sinatra on his Duets album, described him as modern, complex, and full of attitude. He added, "Frank Sinatra was the 20th century. We won't see anyone like him again." People who had complicated relationships with Sinatra also paid their respects. Mia Farrow, his ex-wife, called him a formidable artist and a formidable man. Dean Martin's daughter, Diana, shared a more personal memory. "He was like an uncle to me," she said. "When my brother died, Frank was the first one there. He was a true friend." Sinatra's death wasn't just felt by those close to him, it rippled across the country. In Las Vegas, a city where Sinatra had performed for decades, the casinos turned off their lights for 1 minute in his honor. In New York, the Empire State Building glowed blue for 3 days, a touching tribute to Old Blue Eyes. These gestures showed how deeply Sinatra was loved and how much he had shaped American culture.